Hey there, Jonathan Golko here. Welcome back to the sound booth at Studio 1405. In this episode, we complete our sonic journey of creating a recording session from scratch in Pro Tools, using video footage from that recording session to edit together a short music video teaser, and will now conclude with a quick look into creating album art. Album art is the visual representation of a musical work. Before an audience even hears the first note of your latest recording, they can evaluate the song's aesthetic feel through a combination of font selections, color schemes, background textures, and specific objects of focus. In this episode, we're going to dive into Adobe Illustrator and an online content creation site called canva.com to look at a few ways to generate promotional images such as album art, thumbnails, and posters. To kick things off, let's take a look at the thumbnail from our Moonlight Sonata tutorial series. So the image that we're looking at here is our final version that we created in Canva. So what we're going to do is go through Adobe Illustrator and break down some of the layers that are happening here, and we'll take a look at how I recreated it using a different software. So if we click down here, we're going to get right into Adobe Illustrator. I did my best to get as close to that original image. We are going to find there are some differences here in the text. The font is going to be a bit different, as well as this stock image of the moon. Let's get started looking at the right-hand side here. We're in the layers. So what we can do is taking a look at this eye. This shows the visibility of each layer. If we click and drag, see that we can turn all of those off. That's just like how we would bypass effects in Pro Tools. We're able to toggle them on and off to be able to see what they look like before and after. So right now we're looking at a totally blank screen. Everything here has been bypassed. Up here at the top, I have what is our original image. And the reason that it's faded is up here in opacity, I lowered this down dramatically so that we didn't see the full color image. What we ended up seeing was just this really light fade. So what we're going to do is use this as our basic template. And because it's faded, we're going to be able to stack other layers on top of it and then end up removing it and getting our final image. Now this method is really helpful and is a great way for creating your own derivative work. And what that means is you could find another graphic or find something that inspires you and then start with that image. If you were using Illustrator, you'd be able to bring that image in, you change that opacity and lower it so it's very faded, and then you can start tracing around it, whether you're using other stock images or you're actually going to be drawing it by hand using tools available in Adobe. So what I did first was I started with our video image. So this is just a screenshot from our video tutorial. And the reason we're using this photo is because it tells you the story of what's going on here. We have a main character who's likely to be speaking, explaining something about this software, which we can gather as Pro Tools. We see we've got the monitor speaker here, and we've got this soundproof room, so we can presume that we're in a recording studio. And we see we've got some books stacked here. This is the image of our featured artist, Ludwig van Beethoven. Next, I went to the moon. And how I did this was this image that we're looking at here came from the stock images available in Canva. I went and found the closest stock photo that I could and ended up with this image, with the moon reflecting on water, and I had to adjust its size so that its frame fit within the context of the original image there. So it's very, very close, except for you'll see that the water line is a little bit higher than the original, and we've got some stars happening here in the background. But for this tutorial, this will suffice. Next, I had the studio logo. Now this is another image that I just drag and drop in and then made some adjustments based on where this top font is going to lie. You'll notice this doesn't line up exactly, and that's because our main Moonlight Sonata title font is a little bit different as well. And to get the rest of this text in place, I simply went here to the type tool, I entered and placed it as close as possible to the rest of the text. So for these final bits, we just bring those in. Of course, they're a little bit different font and a little bit different placement based on this particular graphic. And then to finish up the rest of the text, we'll add here the Moonlight Sonata title. You'll notice that it's a similar script font, but the main difference here, I went with one that had the ambiance of a neon light, where in Adobe Illustrator, the closest thing that I could find was this script font, which is a little bit more like handwriting. Finally, our bottom slide, all the way in the background, there is this black background that the rest of this image just simply sits in. And so to conclude this part, we're going to then bypass our template and be left with our final image. So we can see that there are some imperfections as we threw this one together rather quick. We've got some of the background glow here that doesn't necessarily sit as comfortably and even. Again, I don't like how high this water is, and it starts to get in the way of some of the words and the text here. And we've got a little bit of that black line happening right there. But this kind of gives you just a quick look at how an image can be made using Adobe Illustrator, and starting with something from a template and using that opacity and that overlay effect to be able to rebuild your own image on top of a pre-existing image. Now, it's worth noting that when I created this session in Illustrator, I based this size on YouTube's standard thumbnail size, which is 1280 by 720. And when it comes to the dimensions of your image, this is important. You want to find out exactly what the size is of the platform so that it can display your image at its best quality. Again, for YouTube, that's going to be 1280 by 720. So when I started in Canva and in Illustrator, those were the dimensions that I began with. So I knew that when I reformatted all of my image and all of these graphics, it would fit comfortably and be compatible with YouTube's thumbnail image size limit. Now, as we transition into our Canva design, I want to point out a great resource for creative marketing tips. Check out DIYmusician.cdbaby.com. There you'll find blog posts covering a wide range of music industry-related content. They recently shared Dan Cole's article about designing album art, which includes tips on how you can approach your own designs. Cole begins by identifying 3 basic elements of album covers: photos, illustrations or graphics, and typography. In short, this would either be a band photo or image of a solo artist, a drawing, painting, or computer-generated image, or simply an image that contains only text. Naturally, we're going to be using a mix of these 3 elements. Looking at the Moonlight Sonata thumbnail, you can see that I use a combination of all 3. In this image, now we're looking at canva.com. If we break down some of the layers real quick, we'll see that we have this image. This would represent the band or solo artist. Down here at the bottom in the back, we've got the graphic of the moonlight. And then, of course, we have the typography, which is the descriptive text. Now, let's run down the toolbar here on the left. These are templates that really make it simple to create any kind of poster or slide. For example, by just simply clicking one of these templates, you'll be able to change the photo and the text to customize this image to communicate your message to your audience. Under that, we have elements. Now, this will give you some different graphics to choose from. You can choose some audio and video as well as different frame sizes. If we take a quick look at the search and just go for Moonlight, you can see all of their graphics that are related to the keyword Moonlight. Now you'll notice that some of these have a crown next to them, and that means that you're going to be paying part of their subscription in order to use these graphics. But they've got many free ones to choose from that you can then manipulate and change within their editor. Under that, we have uploads. And for uploads, this is as easy as going onto your computer's hard drive, grabbing those photos and videos, uploading them onto the Canva database, and then you'll be able to manipulate them and change them within the context of whatever your promotional image is. If we go to text, again, you're going to see an impressive selection of dynamic font choices. And each one is going to send a different message to your audience. To select a font, simply click and it already applies it to your slide. And then, of course, you go down to the edge and you can change the scale. And then, with a simple move, you can drag and drop it wherever you like within your image. It doesn't get any easier than that. And under text, we have styles. And this begins with color swatches to choose from that may be able to help you dial in the color aesthetic of the message you're trying to communicate with your audience. When you go down to more, this gets a little bit deeper in terms of integrating applications, in terms of social media or other internet-based platforms. We'll go ahead and close that out now and take a look at this top bar. So if we start with our top image, we can go ahead and edit that, and you can see that they give us a lot of free reign to control the color of this image in terms of its brightness, contrast, saturation. You got a whole lot of filters to choose from, and you can even drop shadows behind these images. In this image, we can see that this is overlaying it right now, and it's cut right where that crop happens in the photo. But if we add a little bit of a glow, we can see that this top image now overlays over the moon just a little bit, and it gives it a little bit of a three-dimensional character. So I really like putting a glow underneath these kinds of images so that they have a little bit more depth to them. Now, you can also crop and flip this image, and you also have some options for animations that allow you to change how this image comes into play. Very, very cool stuff. Now, if we just take a quick look here at the typography, we can see that this font, Moonlight Sonata, came from one of their font templates here in the text area. Ironically, this one is named Moontime. Now, when it came to the size, I wanted to make sure that the text went just a little bit over the image here so that it kind of broke that wall within this two-dimensional space. Next to that, you can change the color, and of course, depending on the font, you can change its bold, italic, or underline qualities. And you can change its alignment, and it too has similar effects that you can change. And within these styles, I chose the neon look, so we got that neon light glow to this font. And by changing the intensity, the lower we go, we start to lose some of that glow and it starts to become darker. But if we increase the intensity, you can see that some of that white comes back in, which gives us that classic neon light image. You can also change the shape and curvature of the text so that it can fit as a contour around some of your other graphics. When it came to bringing in the Studio 1405 logo, again, I simply went to Uploads, I brought in the logo, drag and drop, I have the Studio 1405 font, and then for these other descriptive fonts, it's the same game. Once you've typed in the descriptive text, you can simply go up here to the font selector, scroll through and A/B several different fonts to find the font that's going to best describe your brand to your audience. And that brings us to the end of the Moonlight Sonata tutorial series. Thank you for sharing your time here in the sound booth and with this introductory course on audio and visual production. Now here at Studio 1405, you can book an appointment to use this sound booth for recording, editing, and mixing, as well as booking sessions in our iMac lab, which is equipped with the complete Adobe Creative Suite. Beyond media creation, the studio also offers access to sewing machines, a Prusa 3D printer, the Cricut Explorer Air 2, a light box for product photography, and an area draped with backdrops where you can take promotional photos. While the core of this series is focused on Pro Tools audio software, I hope there have been moments throughout each episode that can be easily applied to your own studio setup and taste in music. While it is by no means mandatory that a musical artist of today must possess all of these abilities in order to share their craft, we may find that developing skills in multimedia production could lead to other springboard opportunities. 20 years ago, it was common for a musical artist to have teams of people helping them cover these bases. Even with teams of specialists working on their brand's behalf, a band could still find themselves in trouble as markets evolved, leaving old methods of business in the wake of newly emerging technologies. That said, we now live in an age where we have all the tools we need right at our fingertips. If artists of today have the tact and personality to represent themselves in the digital world, then they don't necessarily need a dedicated publicist in order to reach a reasonable audience size that can eventually support that artist's future. When it comes to the art of the jack of all trades, we must learn to respect the value of an hour and to mindfully decide how to best utilize that hour of time. It's all about balance. And with a refined workflow and an order of operations, musical artists of the present can showcase their work through the conscientious and thoughtful process of 1 hour at a time. Eventually, this effort can compound upon itself and may lead to wonderful artistic developments that can inspire new ideas and approaches to our craft, as well as challenge and push us to become more than we've ever imagined. So until next time, I've been Jonathan. Keep creating.